A3, Engineering Project Manager Nick Atai is here to present Accept Grant for Adaptive Signal Project.
Thank you and good evening.
Good evening.
Let's get this presentation going here. There we go. All right, so this item is acceptance of a grant for the SR303 Adaptive Signals project. This is a project that was identified as part of the SR303 corridor study. This is for segment 3. It was a high priority implementation for an improvement. The Adaptive Signal project, its main goal is to improve corridor reliability and travel times. And this is between Sheridan Road and Rydell Road. Improved transit reliability, of course, with the system being adaptive. it's able to accommodate changes in traffic patterns and travel volumes. This area was identified as one of the kind of the highest areas prime for redevelopment along the corridor. So, the traffic volumes are going to change substantially over time. And then this will also establish kind of a framework for the city as we continue to look into signal and ITS type improvements, and eventually having a localized traffic management center. So adaptive signal technology, essentially, you've got an algorithm, kind of a piece of equipment that adjusts the timing of the signal to accommodate traffic patterns instantaneously. So you're getting that real-time traffic adjustment to improve the reliability, decreasing the wait times, the times that you're sitting at a red light and there's not much traffic on the side street. So this system would be able to process that and recognize and provide more green time where it's needed. Obviously, that reduces congestion and increases safety due to adapting to the traffic changes. So how it works, I've tried to kind of really simplify this into four key areas. So the adaptive system uses a combination of sensors in its system to identify and monitor traffic flow and cars approaching the signalized intersections. That data is processed through an algorithm. So there's several different vendors that provide equipment for adaptive signal control technology. So one of the steps we'll be getting into as we move forward with this project is to define what we as the city feel is the best system for our traffic system. But that algorithm is what is communicating with the signal controller to make those adjustments as necessary. Obviously, since this is a coordinated system, the signals are talking to each other to kind of predict in advance when you've got kind of a platoon of traffic along the corridor, and that process repeats. This is not a new technology. I've put some of the other agencies in the area that have implemented the adaptive signal technology. Really something that's evolving and something that's proven to be effective and reduce delays and improve reliability. So this item specifically is to accept a grant. We received a grant from the Puget Sound Regional Council for implementing the adaptive signals along the corridor. So that grant includes just over $2 million of FHWA funds for preliminary engineering and construction. There is a local match, and that's been budgeted in the Transportation Capital Fund. So accepting the grant is the first step for us to be able to go out and engineer again the systems engineering study and the preliminary engineering for the project. Brief overview on schedule. So starting this summer, assuming the grant's accepted, we will go ahead and coordinate with WashDOT, who's going to help administer those funds for us, and solicit those the preliminary engineering services with consultants. Later this year through spring of next year, we'll begin the systems engineering study. So anytime you have federal funds involved in an ITS type project, you have to do a systems engineering study, which is actually great because that allows us to kind of understand what our needs are as a city, even though we're focusing just on the segment of SR 303. We'll begin the design. We'll set the specifications for a vendor. We'll put out an RFP for that equipment. We'll complete the design, and then in late 2025, we'll move forward to the construction phase and get these systems in place. I'm happy to answer any question.
Excellent. Start with Denise, if you want to, unless this Public Works came through.
Yeah. No, please go ahead.
Okay.
I'm excited because I'm starting to feel bridge, and now we're creeping up the corridor. Couple of questions. Design with the light system algorithms, all of that. Are you talking about hardware design or?
Right. So yeah, there's two components. So there's the actual adaptive hardware that gets installed at the signal.
Okay.
But then you have to get the communications in place to actually run all the cabling. And then we have to figure out how do we get the information from the signals back to either this facility or Oyster Bay
Okay,
for,
okay.
our
So it's that kind of a
Yep.
design. I
Correct.
gotcha.
Correct.
And then my other question is, it would appear to me that, there are competing needs. We have commuters that just zip on through, and then we've got a lot of residents. And I would assume, but I want to check this, when all the algorithms and everything are measured and all of this stuff is just perking right along, the balance will be struck by need. So if there are more residents coming out onto the corridor at a certain time, the lights will adjust accordingly. So that it kind of depends on where the greatest need is, but it should be better for everybody involved, not just commuters, but residents.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know that the county is actually implementing some type of system, a smart traffic system, not quite an adaptive system, but as they continue that process, we'll get that full blown coordinated corridor along 303, the north of Rydell. And we do operate the signal at Pusan north of Rydell as well. So again, looking for opportunities. This is just the initial phase.
And no, that's in the counties.
Yes, so there's an agreement for us to operate that signal.
Okay.
As well.
Oh, that's interesting. And so this light at Rydell, we're getting this stuff in, but and this is community development, but you got 300 to 400 apartments right there on Rydell. So timing wise, is this adaptive signaling going to be in there before that's populated, before people have moved in?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the timing. I know they're well under construction on the apartments.
Oh yeah.
This shouldn't be a very super complicated install process. There's going to be probably some tweaking, the first part when it goes in to make sure everything's operating the way it should. We actually just retimed 303 corridor not too long ago, so I know it's even personally driving on corridor, the timing seems a lot better. But it's just a matter of as with any grant funding timing, if we have an opportunity to advance it sooner, we will. But until we get through that systems engineering process, we really need to understand, what type of infrastructure will have to be in place to
I gotcha.
communicate.
How normally does community development work with public works? Because this is a great example, right? You got hundreds of people moving in one little plot of land. It's going to spill right onto Rydell in 303, and so y'all, I see you're just chomping at the bit, aren't you, to say something?
Just to expand a little bit on your question, how we coordinate. So when a development comes into town, we take a look at what the development is, how many trips that they're going to put on the roadway. And we quite often will ask the developer to put together a transportation impact analysis. We call it a TIA. And what that does, that takes a look at the added trips onto our transportation system. It takes a look at the intersections that we have. And we have a concurrency requirement through Growth Management Act that we need to meet when new development comes in and puts more trips onto the network. So we evaluate what those new trips are, whether they meet our development standards for concurrency. And then if they don't, then we ask the developer to help us out by putting in improvements that help with the development that they are proposing. So we work hand in hand with DCD on these developments, and that's how we do it. Now with that development in particular, there is a lot of trips coming in. They did meet our concurrency, but when they're in, I think that we probably will have some adjustments that we will need to make to the signal timing, when they're in to help out with traffic flow. So that's something that I think we're anticipating already. And this project that Nick has with adaptive signal will definitely help out with that.
Yeah.
When it's put in, but I'm not sure that the timing for that, as it sits right now, will be in place before the development is finished. And I guess Eric can maybe Sorry, Garrett, only
No, it's
on the
good.
spot.
No, the apartments that are at Verdell and Elmira, there's about 330 total, and they're doing that in 2 phases. So the first phase for half that, so that's what you see what's being constructed up there right now. I don't know how close they're getting to occupancy. I think there's a lot of work left to do on the interior of the buildings. And for the remainder of that 303 corridor up by Verdell, I think there are around 800 plus total units going in, but it's they haven't submitted building permits. So it's hard to say what the majority of that impact will have.
There is a lot of concern in the community about that apartment complex and traffic, and especially Elmira. You know, it takes a little jog there, and very dangerous. And then you've got, people coming into the apartment. I don't know if they're going to be coming out, but anyway, it feels somewhat overwhelming as a resident over there to know that there are going to be all these, it's already, somewhat busy.
Sorry to jump in, just make
Yeah.
sure, back to the traffic signal improvement.
Yeah,
Make sure it doesn't get too-
okay,
too big on the
okay,
scope, sorry.
okay. So yeah, traffic, I'm sure the signal adaptive technology will take care of my initial concerns. Thank you,
No,
President
good.
Coughlin.
Jennifer is also right next door.
Somewhat in my hood.
Yeah,
So talk to me, okay, can you repeat again what the match was that's coming out of the transportation capital? Can you repeat that information for me?
Yeah, it's so we're getting a just under $2.07 million FHWA fund. The match is about $450,000.
Okay, and it's coming out of the transportation capital fund. So I have that here on the agenda, Bill. When does that actually happen in this scheme in the whole budget process? So I saw, because you said the construction's underway. I guess I'm a little confused with the timeline. Construction's underway. Sorry that I'm confused. I appreciate any help.
That's what I'm here for.
Construction's going underway in 25, but the last allocation is until 26.
No, so we have the ability to obligate to request the grant funds for construction in late 25.
Okay, so you're going to encumber those funds, but it doesn't pay out till the 26th? Is that my?
No, so as soon as we receive approval to utilize the construction funds from the grant, then we would be able to move forward with bidding out the
Okay.
contractor.
I just saw those 2 chunks,
Yeah.
and so I just wanted to make sure I was understanding. There was the August 15th and the June 1st. So for phase 2, okay. Well, more will be revealed on that. And so, talk to me about the impacts on this major road. We have talked about this in the past, but and so can you remind me again? I feel like there's very little impact to the actual roads. Can you talk to me about that?
So with this specific project, as far as the impacts during construction,
Impacts during construction. Are we taking out whole signals, or is it an update to the software?
no. So what it's going to be is it's going to be again retrofitting. So there's going to be new equipment that are going to be mounted to the existing signals.
Right.
We have the signal controller boxes that are already in place at each intersection. So those signal boxes have capacity for the adaptive equipment to basically sit in there and
Okay.
communicate with the controller. The work is going to be conduit, and we may have to, depending on where the wiring is going for communications, that's going to be the biggest challenge. But
Okay.
a lot of that can be done, under traffic where they're actually, boring under the roadway. We're gonna have to survey and look where utilities are. So that's going to be probably the primary challenge as far as construction. And then, we need to look at, do we need to, put in conduit, towards the Warren Avenue Bridge. We do have some copper communications placed. Is that copper sufficient? These are all the questions that we have to ask when we're going to identify a vendor that are going to impact the cost and the scale of construction.
And more will be revealed on that as well. Okay, can you talk to me about how adaptive signaling affects pedestrian crossing? Does that have any effect on the timing pedestrians?
The adaptive systems that we've spoken with one vendor in particular, and I believe all of the vendors are, have capacity that the software detects pedestrians. So when you're setting up like you have radar detection that picks up vehicles, but then you also might have like a camera there that can set zones, and that video information is getting fed into the adaptive signal. So if there is a call for a pedestrian, it's picking up that information. So again, that's as we go through and talk to the vendors and say, okay, we know that we've got pedestrian crossings at 3 legs of the intersection. We know generally what those constraints are. We'll set those parameters to make sure the adaptive signal takes into account all of the peds and vehicles.
Yeah, I was just curious if it was adaptive for pedestrians as well. You know what I mean? Like, there's clearly times of the day where there's more pedestrian traffic than not. So I was just curious if that fit into the algorithm. Is it an algorithm?
It is. So
Okay.
it's interesting. So one of this may be too much detail, but one of the vendors,
Please, no, that's good.
their algorithm is called a greedy algorithm.
Okay.
So the way that I understand it works, and I could be misspeaking, is that as vehicles approach, the software gives each of the cars like a token, basically.
Okay.
And the longer they're sitting there, the more tokens they get. And what the algorithm's trying to do is doesn't want to give out these tokens, because every time a car is waiting, it's giving it more tokens. So that's just what they call their algorithm. That's just one particular software, which is interesting to think about how the software is processing, all of this data in real time and making
Greedy, I
decisions.
love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's interesting. All right. Oh yeah. Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have right now. Appreciate the new information.
Yeah.
The greedy
Cool.
algorithm. That might be something I use in my day-to-day.
That's a great expression.
So on than Eric.
Eric, I'll go after Eric.
So it was interesting, Nick. I listened to the presentation, try to multitask, did a little internet search on adaptive. It's not all a bed of roses, right? There's some critiques of adaptive signals.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
So, and you can research that on your own, that's fine. I'm not against the technology, but I find it fascinating. So our current systems right now are streetlights. Is it a combination of some information goes to Oyster Bay and then some of it is just basically a streetlight? It's timed and doesn't go anywhere as far as the information, being able to control the streetlight, or not the streetlight, the signal. How do we currently work?
So currently, a lot of the signals function on like a time of day plan. So, what happens with that is that you're taking, say every 3 to 4 years, you're taking kind of what you think the traffic's doing in that period during different periods of the day. And a lot of times we'll bring on a traffic engineer, someone that specifically is able to optimize the signalization and come up with, optimal signal timing plans. Those get programmed in the controller and then implemented in the field. So the challenge with that is you're making a best guess. And, that's not taking into account, major fluctuations in traffic. It's doing, the best job that it can, but it's not able to make those real-time changes depending on what's going on with the traffic.
But the actual control, does the engineer or somebody that works in the signal department for the city of Bremerton actually have to manually program that, or do they do? Okay.
I see Shane with his hand up back there.
I was just gonna say, none of the information goes back to.
Okay, so that's what I was getting at. And this is just fact of life as we become the Internet of Things. There are security issues. There's so many hackers in this world that they could conceivably, this is something I'm coming up with, but I'm sure it exists. I didn't see it in my little research. Someone could hack into the system and basically create chaos on Wheaton Way in the Internet of Things, I assume. It's a possibility.
I've seen it in movies.
Okay, there you go. So, but that someone could hack this meeting and take over on the Zoom thing or whatever. That's scary. I have an employee that's in Phoenix. They got self-driving cars going around. There was an accident Apparently, the self-driving car doesn't know how to handle an accident going around. So it creates a huge backup. You know, there's all of these unintended consequences. So what I'm saying is, I'm sure, okay, we got to move forward. I understand. I saw City of Seattle has adaptive controls they had since 2017, and it's still a mess. The Mercer Street, that's still, I'd take my wife to the, well, not anymore, to the cancer care, and we have to take Mercer. Oh my goodness, that just unbelievable. But and there's other cities that had success, City of Alexandria or whatever. It's the wave of the future. I assume that whatever purveyor we pick for this, you can modify the software and all this stuff. And it's just little baby steps, and it's not going to be a bed of roses. There's going to be issues.
Yeah, the security is one of the things that we look at in the systems engineering process. The systems engineering process will say, okay, what's important to us, and the vendors will be selected depending on the parameters that we put into that systems engineering process. And security is one of those. And one of the things that we have talked about internally, although we haven't gotten away with the systems engineering process, is one of the ways that we do get a secure network is everything's hardwired. Right, everything's in conduit, everything is hardwired, and it goes from our traffic center out to our signals, and it's in conduits. Nobody has access to it, and that's one of the things that we're looking at, but and trying to understand exactly how that communications can work. And there's cloud-based programs for this. Obviously that the vendors have on their servers. So security is a big component of it, and that's something that definitely we'll look at in the system engineering process.
We already do this for the water system.
I know, the SCADA,
So
I understand.
SCADA, we
Yeah.
are aware of security. We are concerned about security, so it's going to be a similar kind of protocol. You have remote sites, they have to communicate with a hub, and you have to make sure the communication is secure and encrypted and all that. So it'll probably be similar to that, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no other questions. Just it's a little scary.
Good to think about it all. Yeah. Honor.
Thanks. Thank you. I had hoped that all of you would ask questions that I hadn't thought of, and you did. I thought the one about the pedestrians was really interesting. So I guess my first question, Nick, is this is a state route. Why is the city paying?
Because we operate the signals on the state route. So the state is only responsible basically for maintaining the pavement within the curb. So, as an agency that operates the signals, we're responsible for any upgrades to the signals themselves.
And that's throughout the state. They just do what actually touches the tires. They don't do signals or.
There may be some specific instances. Like I mentioned, the signal north of Rydell is kind of a different agreement. It's outside the city limits. Obviously, like the Minette Bridge is kind of a special case on how that's maintained. So for the most part, the SR3 and 3 corridor through the city, the city's responsible for operations.
Okay, thank you.
Just to expound on that just a little bit, there is an RCW that specifies city routes, and that's state routes. So like it's a shared responsibility, and it's all set up in the RCW. And I think it goes as over a certain population, under a certain population. I think it's around 20 to 25,000, and the state will assume responsibility for those state routes as city streets. Since we have higher than that population, then we assume responsibility for a certain portion of those state routes that coincide with city streets. So these are facilities in Bremerton that are 303, 304, Kitsap Way, SR 310. All those facilities are our shared responsibility with the DOT. And we're responsible for signage, pavement markings, and like Nick said, the DOT is only responsible for the pavement structural section from curb to curb, and everything else is our responsibility, including the signals and signal operations. And the only difference, we do have an agreement with the DOT to maintain and operate a handful of their signals, and we talked about Fergie's being one of those. So there is some nuance there, a little bit of nuance, and that's.
Always very pleased to hear about nuance, but in general then, this is, okay. You have estimated 451,000 for the city match. And with construction, can we like just agree to refer to that as around $500,000?
Yes, so, yeah, so it's about, I think it's about $130,000 of that is local match for the preliminary engineering, and then the balance would be for construction. Obviously, you know, if the project's less, then match would come down, which is the condition of the grant.
Okay, but if the project costs more, will the grant increase?
I mean, we can always ask PSRC for additional funding. That's never guaranteed, but you know,
Okay.
Cross that bridge when we get there if it happens.
Okay, and then the signals are not adaptive now. It was my understanding that buses and public safety were able to affect the flow.
So that's so there is what's called an OPTCOM sensor on the signals that has a special way of communicating with emergency services. That's not adaptive. So adaptive is taking into account all vehicles, you know, regardless. So you know, it's using those, you know, the sensors to pick up the day-to-day commuting traffic.
Okay, almost done.
Yep.
Okay. Hang on here, please. I tried to do a fancy thing where instead of like writing it down by hand, I thought I would highlight and put in a sticky note, and you can see how well that worked.
I've got this on. Red light, green light.
Marco.
Hello.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I guess 400 and let's call it $500,000, because in my experience, all construction costs end up being higher than you first imagine them. And if it only goes up another 50,000, that will be a delight to all, and there will be, you know, dance. So for that amount of money, we could build sidewalks on either side of a half a mile of street. Is that about correct?
Half a mile of street. I mean, potentially, but sidewalks are such a, you know, a broad term. So it depends on, you know, what the conditions are. There sidewalks are pulling out, the grading. I mean, comparatively, yeah. I mean, $500,000 will get you a little bit of sidewalk, sure.
Well, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm often wrong. But currently, we're doing about a half a mile of sidewalk per year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So doing a mile, like a half a mile on each side, would be double, and that would increase the walkability, which is like one of the city's goals, and not listed in our goals and priorities per se, but something that we have been working towards, is making a more walkable city for the people who live here, increasing livability instead of it's quite accurate that this will also be of service to people who live around there, you know, on either side of Wheaton Way. But a prime purpose of it is to move people from the shipyard to their homes, and from their homes to the shipyard. That's, and again, if I'm wrong, please correct me, that's the bulk of the traffic on Wheaton Way. Or it's the bulk of the high pressure traffic. Is that the right word? You know. Yeah.
I know what you're, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, I mean, this project was, again, you know, it came out as a high priority implementation out of the SR 303 study. You know, SR 303 is a major, you know, arterial through the city. There's a lot of traffic. You know, safety component is a major portion of that. You know, eventually, you know, if there's, you know, improvements to transit, maybe there's an opportunity to kind of expand this adaptive to, you know, maybe pick up transit a little bit better than with current technology. And then, you know, think about the time it takes for the city to go in and retime traffic signals on a routine basis. And by then, are we getting complaints? Are we being responsive? And then the time it takes to actually make those adjustments, like we just did on 303 and we end up in the cycle. So, the goal is for us to utilize this technology, be effective in how we're moving traffic through the city and reduce delays, reduce emissions, all the good things that come with, a reliable corridor. So.
Yeah. And please forgive me. It's like, I'm just asking questions. I'm not I'm not saying, on the night of November 31st, were you? It's just because I'm just trying to understand this. So I understand everything that you've said to me, and I understand how often we, the city of Bremerton, have put money into Kitsap Way and Wheaton Way and moving traffic through.
Make sure to state.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm almost done.
Okay.
So I guess to sum up, I think we should reject this grant and not provide the matching funds and use that money for sidewalks to increase the livability of our city. I am one of 7, or right now one of 5, but good enough. So I'm just saying that I think that the livability of Bremerton is of greater importance than the convenience of commuters. That's all.
Director Nucky, do you want to speak to, so it sounds like the main question here is how this came about as part of the TIP capital projects funding. Is that what you wanted to?
Actually, what I really wanted to say was, we bring a lot of different improvements forward for pedestrians, for bicycles, for vehicles. We're at capacity with our street crew, with our current work delivery. If you gave us another $500,000 and said we want the street crew to build sidewalks with this, then I'd be asking you, what do you want us to not do? Right? Because, and I think we have a very balanced program. I think we have a very healthy approach with sidewalks, with our current staffing, with the work delivery. So I just wanted to say that. I think that there are significant benefits associated with this project for throughput. Somebody mentioned a moment ago the whole issue of Opticom, right? Well, Opticom's great. It allows emergency services to go through. When it does that, it disrupts the timing of the entire corridor, and it takes a while for that timing to recover. An adaptive system is much more reactive to that, and I'm definitely, much better capable of communicating those advantages, same or same. But I guess what I want to say is that when we look at our improvements, we try to leverage our dollars to the best extent that we can to try to move a host of projects forward that we think that are very beneficial to the city. And leveraging those grant dollars has always been a goal of council. So that's what I want to say.
Excellent. And
I know I've already
spoken. Let me. Let's get a few quick ones, and then I think we're going long on this item. But and in that context, okay, so within the 3 3/4 study, I know we talked about this at Public Works last year, if I remember right. I think when we had to go fund this, was there? And I am blanking. For the south part, south of Warren Bridge, did we already do some improvements there, or is there plan improvements that go along with it? No, okay, I'm seeing head nods. Okay.
We didn't include any improvements. We did. So the thing I was going to say is that for this particular grant, it was through Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council, and as part of the grant application, they require us to have a resolution through council for support in the project before we applied for it. So early last year, we came to council. We had a resolution that included, we tried to get funding for south of the bridge. So it originally started at Burwell Street and went all the way up to Riddell. And so that's what we came to council with, was that entire package for a resolution. Through the countywide competition process, it became clear that the overall amount for that project was way too much for us to ask for that amount. So we pared it back for those signals just north of the bridge. So that's what ended up happening. That's how we got here with this funding in this set of projects.
Okay, Cool. No, thanks so much for that history. Yeah, for the cancel the resolution. Okay. We'll go one more round. The only other question. Nope, sorry, that was already answered. Okay, so yeah, Denise
I
and
think
Anna
Anna
for a
would-
quick second
oh.
round. Yeah.
Okay. I happen to be on that SR 303 planning group or whatever it was. And I represented the Chamber of Commerce, local businesses. How was all this work? And this adaptive signaling is just one little tiny part of what's going on in that corridor. You know, I'm excited about that corridor. This is where I can recommend mid-century modern for a whole design thing. Anyway, trying to look for an identity for my district, that's all. So anyway, it's just one little aspect. We're talking sidewalks, we're talking media. I mean, that corridor just isn't gonna be the same afterwards. And I'll always be a champion for the balance between the needs of our residents and the needs of the commuters. So those businesses are really important to our residents. And I'm glad that y'all come up with such a great plan.
Well, if Public Works applied for this and council approval was required and council approval was given, then I got bupkis. And, yeah, I withdraw all objections because you got to honor your word. That's it.
Oh, Henry, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, you didn't know it's gonna take so long, did you? Yeah, so you're still in the hot seat.
None of us knew.
Right. I'm curious about Mike, is this a you question about the balancing? That's why I was curious about when the match is gonna be taken out of the capital fund.
So with the match, it's been programmed in our outlook. So I've been there for the council every year. So it's programmed in. It will be taken out as the cost.
Programmed, what do you mean?
So programmed since your outlook in our big forecast.
So this is already on there.
Already on it.
Okay, great. I'm just gonna hold off my questions.
It comes out with every reimbursement request. Like we do a request, then we take that percentage out, we get reimbursed for whatever their percentage is, and then we pay out our match as we go through the project. Does that make sense?
Does that fund generate revenue? How does it generate revenue?
Just capital. It has some components with multimodal tax, particularly it's grant funded, definitely grant funded.
Okay. Oh, supported by REIT. Okay.
There's a budget there as well. Stormwater utility tax as well.
When you say, I'm a little touchy about REIT, so that's why I want to kind of dig in a little bit more. So is this another way that we are allocating REIT funds to another project? Are we?
Jermaine got a little bit of.
We're talking about the match.
Specifically going to affect other funding.
Are the match dollars linked to allocation of any REIT funds?
Yes, this project has REIT funds associated with it. Definitely.
Here, I'm going with that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's why I'm going to hold discussion on the budget and finance, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, excellent. All really good questions. And I mean, traffic is one of the main things city does and tackles. So it's good to hash out some of the stuff. So if this gets approved, the next time council would see this project is accepting a bid for construction. Is that right?
No, the next time we would have another contract for the council is when we solicited for professional engineering services and brought that contract.
Oh, right, okay. Fine. Okay, excellent. Nope, I'll say this sounds like a great project. Appreciate all the concerns, but I've driven in cities and places that have adaptive signaling, and to me, it's really noticeable. You're starting to approach a light, and it changes for you, and it's smooth. So excellent. Thank you. All right. So with all that discussion, any objections to consent for next week?
Consent.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for all the thorough questions and the high traffic conversation.
Next.
All right.
Hi.
This will go on consent for next week. Thanks all.
Thank you very much.
Mhm. Give me a second to pull back up my agenda. Yeah. Here we go. All right, next up, item A4, we have Managing Engineer Bill Davis to present Water Quality Nutrient Reduction Permit Grant Agreement with Washington State Department of Ecology.
Good evening, Bremerton City Council. This grant discussion should take a lot less time than the previous one.
You never
Just
know.
So, Mr. Davis.
I want
So-
to know for sure.
Yeah, the Department of Ecology has offered grants, no match grants, to support the nutrient general permit, the implementation of this permit by the various agencies. There's, I believe, 68 different agencies that have been offered this grant. We applied for it. We received it. It's for about $128,000, and it's going to support, paying for a consultant that's helping us develop our optimization plans, coming up with strategies for nutrient removal, paying for our own staff, chemicals that we're using to inject into our processes to study how our existing processes can be used for nitrogen removal. So, just in general, this past year, we were able to implement a strategy of the plant just to kind of study how our plant does work with nitrogen removal. We submitted our annual plan at the end of March, so we're on track. That's all I have to say. Any questions?
Anybody? And this is go through Public Works. For anybody yet?
I don't think so.
So,
Thanks. So at one point on page, when they're describing the task, it said if the recipient is out of compliant with the nutrient general permit. Are we out of compliance?
No.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the key things we had to do was submit our annual report by the end of March, which we did.
Good. One small question and then one big question. So the start date was July 2021.
I think it was January 1st of 2021. Anyone else? It's been about a year and a half since we've been complying with the permit.
Under general information, agreement number Wickbusner 2021. The effective date of the agreement is 2021 and it expires 2025, but that doesn't govern the construction. It's just the agreement.
That's when this $128,000 can be for costs up till that date.
Okay. And then thank you. How does this fit into the whole appeal against the kind of draconian revision that DOE did on the nutrient general permits a couple of years back?
The legal appeal.
Yeah, is this helping us optimize to move towards a standard to move towards satisfying the new standard?
I'm not sure where we're at with the legal appeal. I know there were some other agencies involved with the appeal, and I think we shouldered on that. We came part of that. This is just a cover. We're still trying to comply with the permit. We haven't stopped doing anything. We're still doing our optimization testing and putting together our plans. So we're acting as if we have to comply with the permit.
Okay. And then the final thing I have to say is congratulations.
any other questions, comments? All right. And I forgot to say congrats on the last grant as well. So yes, congrats on all the great work on bringing in the bacon to keep the city running. So no questions, just a kudos. All right. Any objection to consent for next week?
Consent.
Hearing none, this will go on consent next week. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Oh boy, now we get to talk about golf carts.
Right. Moving along. I'll think of a fun. Item A5, we have Parks and Recreation Director Jeff Olivato here to present golf cart lease agreement with Yamaha Motor Corporation USA for Gold Mountain Golf Club. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, council. We brought the brains of the outfit with us here. This is Daryl Matheny, General Manager for Columbia Hospitality at Gold Mountain. So Daryl and his team, we've been leasing golf carts, and we were on our second bout with Yamaha, and that lease agreement is due up in June of this year. So his team went out and got bids. Amazing how much golf carts increased, and
over the year. So we went out and got bids and think we got a really solid bid from Yamaha. The changes in this contract are obviously the cost per cart. We also are increasing the number of the fleet. We used to have 120 carts, and each year we would subsequently have, rent additional carts for larger events. We knew in 2022, we spent approximately $21,000 additional dollars renting extra carts. That just speaks to how well the golf course is running with the number of events and golfers, the need to go out and get additional carts. So this proposal increases the fleet carts from 120 to 140. It also includes 4 what we call Marshall carts. They're the 4 passenger carts, 3 beverage carts, and then 1 utility cart. The total savings really come in when you start looking at the cost, and I'll refer you to page 87 of your packet. And I'm going to attempt to share this and see how this works.
Attachment 1.
Yes, they're sharing key, Mike.
Such a login in there. Sure.
Should be.
App hit share.
Oh, the share content. That's right. Okay.
Wrong, Joe. Sorry.
But did it tell you the key?
It's up there. It's under the share.
Oh,
screen.
sorry, got it. So, I got it.
Yeah.
Like an eye chart, Mike. Good job.
August
2020.
Thank you.
Is this one way somebody could hijack our meeting now? Is that key
That's
public?
why I was hesitating to share it out loud in the room. You're back up. Sorry. Yeah.
And control to the room.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
I think Councilman Younger's AI is taking over here.
Yeah. In the Internet of Things. Is that how you said it?
IoT,
Internet of
yeah.
all things.
Yeah.
Things, internet.
Thank you. Oh, no, that didn't work.
What do we want now?
Want somebody who knows how to type.
So we actually make money.
Over to 7
Jeez.
There we go.
All right.
I mean, not that much.
Huh?
Not that much.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Well, the revenue compared to the cost, right? Or is the
Yeah.
revenue?
All right. Let's focus.
Is that just
Net
$5,000?
revenue over 48 months lease
Said
is
the
$2 million.
sharing is,
We're not supposed to talk to each other.
Yeah, let's
Jim's
wait
gonna
until
shut
it
us
gets
down.
this size.
What I apologize. What I do is refer you to page 87 of your packet. Thank you. And this is a worksheet that we put together to
Got
try to kind of combine all the bids together to understand what the different costs are. Some other things to consider in this worksheet, we look at the monthly cost, it's the monthly lease, what the annual cost is, and this is a 4-year lease, so we combine that for the 4-year total. Other costs to operate the carts are fuel, maintenance, so we add those as well. There's also leasehold tax that we need to pay on the property, so that's added in, so we have a true cost of what the actual cart costs are. So that $934,000 for a 4-year lease seems exorbitant. But if you look at how our revenue comes in on carts, for our last lease period, we paid out $628,000, but we generated over $2.5 million in revenue. So the net for that is nearly $2 million in golf carts rentals. The other benefits of golf carts are that we can increase play and we can have more rounds come through, and that increases our rounds revenue. So really a valuable thing. And finally, the experience, it gives the best experience. We project our revenue to be close to $3 million over the next 4 years of this lease, with the cost of $934,000. We anticipate over $2 million in revenue. That's a net revenue after expenses. Be happy to answer any questions, Daryl, unless you had anything you wanted to add.
Well, I would just add, I mean, these are the three big hitters of golf carts. And we go to them every time a lease ends and we're looking for a new fleet of carts. But Yamaha obviously is a little less expensive than Club Car. But I prefer Yamaha because this would potentially be our third lease. We've got a heavy load of extra parts and knowledge with working with this particular cart. So there's certainly advantages in going with Yamaha. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of money, but it generates a lot of revenue.
I would also add that, the Yamaha cart's been a good cart for us. We've had good success from it. Gold Mountain isn't just a flat course. There's some particular areas that require some horsepower, especially with me and Mike and Mike. So they really do work well, and they have really high fuel efficiency. These carts average about 40 to 45 miles per gallon, and that lowers our fuel cost overall. So all of those factors are in place, and plus it's just nice having a high quality cart. It keeps our experience high level. Yeah. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions on this lease agreement?
Did you say it gets 45? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Actually, I'll beat you by a second, but.
No problem. Just quick question. You said it gets 45 miles per gallon?
It can get up to 45, yeah.
That's what my Nissan gets. I just thought I'd share that. Thank you.
Thank you.
You got golf clubs there?
No,
We can do that.
we can put golf carts. I mean, golf clubs, but I don't think you want my car on your green, huh? That's it. Thank
good.
you.
Anna,
Thanks. So many people can be picky about having cars drive on their lawns. Thank you for putting all this together. This is a great one page, all on a page. I'm truly asking because every other time we do vehicle procurement, there's we attempt to buy electric vehicles or lease electric vehicles. And I know both EasyGo and Club Car produce electric golf carts. So I was wondering why we went with 140 fleet carts and these others with gas.
Yeah, and that's a great question. All three of those manufacturers offer an electric version for sure. They are a little bit more expensive, but the big problem we have is the infrastructure. We don't have a car barn with the ability to charge those carts. So in order to buy electric carts, you've got to have that infrastructure, and that infrastructure will be considered.
Electric carts don't do well out in the weather. And the actual requirement, if you use electric carts, is they have to be housed in a barn. They have to be in a building that keeps them out of the weather. And then to add to Daryl, the other issue is turnover. So we're able to turn these carts over and run them multiple times during a day, where electric carts tend to be, they're getting better. But right now, you burn one out, run the battery down, it needs to charge for several hours, so we can't use it there. So you need more of them. So you'd have to increase the number of carts that you had in your fleet. We'd love to consider that. We've actually looked at a lot of options.
Absolutely. Yeah, electric cart is as a golfer is much more enjoyable than a gas cart. But I mean, I will say the Yamaha is quiet a cart on the gas version as there is on the market. So, but yeah, if we could figure out a way to build and pay for the infrastructure, then we would absolutely entertain an electric version.
You're making basically in 1 year, your revenue for renting out these carts is paying for the 4-year lease. Is that about correct?
That is about correct, yes.
So doesn't that seem to be a source of funds?
Oh, absolutely.
To
This
build
is one of the several.
The charging?
Yeah,
It's a source of funds to pay the debt service on the golf course. It's a source of funds to pay the contract on the golf course, to pay for all the requirements that we have to do to operate the golf course. Yeah, it's all part of the whole picture of revenue coming in, revenue going out.
And we have a long-term capital plan that is ongoing. I think I've thought out 12 years, and I've identified a cart barn on that capital lease or that capital project sheet, but we need to pay the debt down first before we can
I have many questions that I can't consider particularly germane to this contract. But one is germane. It's like it's an unusual arrangement or new to me that it wouldn't be the city doing the leasing, but Columbia Hospitality is not the city, obviously. So that's an unusual arrangement. I mean,
Columbia we are entering in the agreement. The city is entering into this agreement. That's why we bring it before you for your approval. The city owns the equipment on the golf course. The city owns the golf course. Columbia is a management company that we hired to run the course for us.
And to do the procurement and the comparison of bids. Is that correct?
They're the experts in the golf business, so we defer to them. We work with them closely on capital projects and purchases. This is the level of a capital purchase. It needs to come to council.
Okay. I'm just gonna say, I hope council would like at some future time to discuss all of the things that are not germane to this particular contract, like actually creating the infrastructure to be able to purchase electric vehicles. So I hope we can do that at some future point. Thank you both very much for such long, detailed answers. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions there?
Okay, so I've done a little research for personal reasons on the three major brands of golf carts, and I agree with the city going with the Yamaha Drive 2. One, it has an independent rear suspension, the other two do not. The other thing, as far as, and these are the big three, the other part manufacturers have Chinese parts and they manufacture them in the South, Georgia, Florida, whatnot. If you are in the golf club business, or golf course business, correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to pick one of these big three as your fleet. You will not pick any of the other competitors. So the city did the right thing. They went to the big three, got the bids. Gas versus electric. A lithium ion battery cart is going to be about $2,000 more than a gas cart. The biggest thing is the range right now on a Yamaha lithium ion cart would be 50 miles top. If you had typical batteries that aren't lithium, you're looking at 25 miles. A Drive 2 gas, you're looking at a 250-mile range. This goes to labor costs and turnover of getting these carts. You're going to have to buy more electric carts in order to do the same thing. It's going to increase the city's costs tremendously because of the turnover. You're going to be, the lithium ion charges twice as fast as a typical lead acid battery. Nevertheless, it's going to still take hours to charge that. You're going to have, I don't know what the number is. I'm not an expert there, but if you're buying 140, you're going to need 280 in order to do the math don't work out. In the future, it might work out when the battery technology gets better and the range gets better, but not now. The cart thing is not, to me, is not an issue at this point. It's the range and the cost of the cart.
Questions?
I did already have that one round with my comment about the Nissan. So do you want to go and then I'll take my next
I
one?
have no questions just to wrap up, so. Yeah.
So what do y'all plan to do with the extra 250 a year?
Extra 250 a
Well,
year.
if it's another million over 4 years, am I reading that right? So the extra 250K per year, what are your plans with that?
Well, I'm not going to speak for Daryl, but I'm guessing our contract costs are going to go up a little bit over time. Our labor costs are going up over time. Our consumables will go up over time. We hope to pay down the debt service so that we can have a sustainable funding source for capital projects in the city. That's kind of the goal of the golf course, is to help the city out
Yeah.
and help maybe reduce the amount of REIT that we require to do some of our capital projects. So really, that's
You must
kind
have
of
been
our
listening
approach.
to the last one.
Well, that's the goal, and also to just continue to provide an exceptional experience out there. I mean, this is a nationally renowned golf course, and it's a municipal course. It's something that we should be very proud of in the city of Bremerton, and Daryl and his team should be very proud of how they've kept it at that level. It's not easy to do that. There are a lot of golf courses across the country that are closing, and we've managed to survive that period of time and come out at the top, and we're pretty proud of that. And we hope that we can continue to generate a lot of revenue and someday pay for a lot of stuff in the city. I don't know if Daryl thinks that way, but that's the way I think.
Some of the stuff. I'd still like to get back to the golf course.
Absolutely. And think again, we just did a comprehensive master plan for the Cascade course. That's several $1 million over a period of years that we will try to keep it up to date and be able to continue to generate revenue. We've got infrastructure out there, irrigation systems to the tune of $2 to $3 million that are needing repair. Over time, it's just the course is aging. It needs to have some update. Clubhouse is probably getting close to being, and we got to consider that in the next, Daryl talked about, parking lot overlay. I mean, there's just a number of things that are going to continue to cost us money. Our goal is to be positive at the end of the year so that we're not dipping into any other funds, because that's not really the way the enterprise fund's set up.
Right. So no specific plans for the extra $250K a year, just it's going to go to cover all the additional expenses in the plan. I mean, I hear you saying pay down the debt service, but there's no specific plans to actually put that 250 towards the debt service.
Well, the plan is to increase fund balance to where we have a fund balance where we can start doing some of these major capital projects that we've got on the books to try to do with no exact funding to do it. And because it's an enterprise fund, we don't get to go to REIT, we don't get to go to general fund. We have to do it in-house. I'll also say that Columbia, the contract that we have with Columbia, they put 4% of all of their gross revenue into a capital fund. So that helps build that fund as well. But we're talking about irrigation systems that cost $2 million to replace. So it's not like a small cost. They're not small projects.
So I guess an easy answer to your question would be all of the above. We're paying additional costs. We're at the end of the year, whatever's left, we're paying down as much of that debt as we can. It ends in 2028.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our ultimate goal. But again, just going to.
So I know. Oh, I apologize. I just interrupted you. I'm so sorry. And so does that amount that you pay towards the debt service actually fluctuate based on your fund balance at the end of the year?
It
I mean,
does
this
not,
is not germane.
no.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
okay.
kind of
All right.
go back to this contract.
Okay. Well, we'll
Give a
just,
little leeway.
no.
I
I see the
really
need
like
for it.
I really like your line of thinking. And what I would tell you is that we're committed to making sure that the golf course is doing well, that the fund balance is good, so that we can keep it doing well for years on end. And then ultimately, when the debt service is paid off, we'll be able to have capital funds that council can then decide
Sure.
exactly how. I mean, it's supposed to go to the Parks Capital Fund, but we'll have a discussion about that, I'm sure.
And so, I mean, it sounds like you're meeting two needs here with this contract. You're increasing your capacity, and it sounds like it's needed, and also creating another revenue stream. So, okay, thank you very much for all that information.
Good. I'll just say as well, kudos. I love the comparison is fantastic to have it all laid out there. So that's really easy to make sure we're getting the best contract. Thanks for the actually excellent questions about electric versus gas. Things keep changing on us, but good to know this is 4 years out. So 4 years from now, there might be different technology and ability in play. Great in the long-term planning. And I always go back to before running for council. I didn't know how the golf course operated, but it's great. I mean, I always tell people now, because everyone always wondered, why are we spending all this money on a golf course? And I go, oh no, we're getting money from the golf course. It is a net source of revenue. It's funding our parks, open spaces. So it's good to do due diligence, because every buck we can save ends up back in the city coffers. But I think it's being managed excellently and source of pride for the city, as you said. So thanks to both of you. Excellent. Any objection to having this on consent for next week? All right, well, we won't put the cart before the horse. It's go on consent.
Oh, you've been waiting to say
Perfect.
that the whole
There we go.
meeting, haven't
I was
you?
looking
And
for
go
one more.
Giants.
All right, yeah. Excellent. All right, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank
Maybe
you.
a son plays for the Giants.
All right, that wraps up our agenda bill briefings. We just have general
Yay.
council business. Folks, good to power through that.
Yeah.
6:20. All right,
Easy.
excellent. All
Let's
right.
light 'em up.
First up, item B1, I would normally invite Public Safety Committee Chair, Councilmember Fry, to report on the May 4th meeting, but I believe it was
We
canceled.
canceled. We had one in the air and one celebrating a birthday. And after a discussion with Kylie and Mike, it was decided to go ahead and cancel.
Okay.
Yeah.
And anything urgent that needs to be rescheduled?
No, I asked
Okay.
specifically about time sensitive, and although Jennifer Johnson from the court believed hers to be time sensitive, Mike Riley assured me that it was not for, as far as finance committee and all that kind of thing.
Okay.
Budget.
Question here.
It is not germane to the non-report, so I'll just.
Sounds good.
No, I gave a report on the non-meeting.
Oh, well, I'll just go with other council business, I guess, that's what I
Sounds
want to
good.
just ask.
All right, cool. Thanks for that update. We had no other committees in the past 2 weeks, so.
I
yeah.
should report, and this is from Kyla as well. I know that she's looking at 5536, at what's happening at the state level. They're in discussions, the
Please.
governor has said, this is for the controlled substance law. The governor has said, fix it. Don't leave this room until you fix it, that type of thing. So you're just watching that, I think, every day, and you'll let us know when we need to talk about it.
Oh, hopefully.
Excellent.
I guess I do have one other thing to add, is that we're gonna have a summary regarding what was been discussed over the past, starting last year at least, on the fireworks, so we can give you an update or give council an update on anything we discussed about it in public safety, and just bring that.
Well, that's great to hear. Then get back
Yeah.
to constituents on what we've
Yep.
been talking about over the
Yep.
last year. Possible.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Eric?
So on the drug ordinance or lack of, we had discussed maybe doing it. We're waiting on the legislature, and
Mhm.
the legislature, I guess, called back a special session, as you mentioned. Thought it was interesting that the city of Federal Way passed their own ordinance. And of all cities, Bellingham,
Bellingham.
arguably they're proud of this. They're named the hippiest town in Washington. They passed an ordinance making it illegal to do your drugs in public because they're just frustrated with the whole situation. The city of Bellingham. So let's just hope our legislature can come up with something. Sure. I think the city of Bremerton needs to address it, and the state does.
All right. Related to public safety or, okay. Next
Well,
up,
kind of.
let's do it for general council business. Just
Yeah.
in case. All good. Next up, any other regional committees, boards from recent meetings to report out on? Nothing from the big and PSRC that I remember. No kids at transit meeting. There, no kids at 911 or anything like that. We'll be calling 2 weeks. Okay.
Not for the actual 911, but.
No.
All right.
For the board meeting, yeah.
Kitsap Transit met and they agreed to, we had authorized something, reconstruction of a boat, and the correct resolution number had not been placed on it. So we spent 20 minutes putting the correct resolution number on it and having that, the whole agenda was like that. There was nothing that I would bring back to you guys. Although I do think that their lobbyist, from their point of view, had some interesting comments in his lobby report, in his report on the legislature. And if you'd like, I will forward that to all of you. Yeah, because obviously it's, transport centered.
Good. Similar on the topic, I put on here to remember to mention further business is reached out to Brian McConaughey, our lobbyist. He's available next study session, May 24th, to kind of brief us on the legislative session and any really important bills that passed, anything that may specifically affect Bremerton. I know the drug position will probably come up, or at least at that point. I don't know if there'll be an update, except we have special session scheduled. I was going to see if there were any other specific bills that council wanted briefings on. I know there was a housing density one. I think I may ask. You don't have to tell me right now. We can, but if you think in the next week, email and I'll forward it on to Brian.
Pursuit.
The pursuit.
Oh, the pursuit law. Okay, good. That's a good call.
Those are the three, I think, that really had percolated up for all of us.
Pursuit law, housing density, like this. Okay. Anything else?
You don't want to learn more
Yeah.
about the capital fund, public transportation capital, the
The Public Works Trust
public
Fund.
works trust fund?
They erected
that?
moats and walls around it, and only those who are pure of heart can obtain money from the Public Works Trust Fund. That's the new way.
That's the
So do a lot of
bill.
briefing on that.
It sounds like I need a little more education on it. I
Mhm.
think I would be interested in that one.
Okay, let me add that out. Now.
I don't even know what to call it, apparently. I'm a
Public
little
Works Trust
uneducated on
Fund.
that.
All right,
Apologies.
perfect. Okay, well, let me know next week if you think of any more. We'll have Brian there, and then we'll also have Tony Ives from KRC will come and brief. So also kudos to Anna for, I think you talked to him the other day and suggested, come and brief council. So thanks for.
On the task
Talking with them.
force, yeah.
On the
Yes.
task force,
Yeah.
not on KCR.
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause
thank you.
that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have some updates there on there. Some of the
Oh,
and
and
recent developments with Dave know about like Mills Crossing and the Manette project, but I think other progress. Yeah.
grand opening for Mills Crossing.
24th?
24th of June.
Oh.
I think we're trying to get a fire truck and a police car there, and a food truck, and for the residents, and yeah.
Dancers.
Hey.
Other general council business.
Yeah, obviously we keep, making quorum, but I would really like to talk about the budget. And I know it's gorgeous out, but I sent an email to all of you just recapping points from the auditor's budget memo. Has everyone or anyone had a chance to look at that?
I read it, yeah.
Mhm.
I apologize, I have not.
Yeah.
So I was out
Yeah.
for vacation. Okay.
So the first point was that council would receive the preliminary draft, which does not seem like it would impact staff time. And we could look at that instead of getting our first look at the budget when it hits the website. So that's just something. Did anybody have a strong feeling about that one way or the other?
So I might put up, Mike, I know we,
Yeah,
so with
the
the,
night is released is when it's done. So we give it to council, we can delay it to the public if you like, but there's not a time, we're not releasing it to the public and holding out on council, it's all simultaneous.
Yes.
So we're working to that date to publish a quality document, so there's limited errors. We have one person in the budget office that puts that all together. So if you're asking for earlier timelines, I'd ask your staff.
I think we're just asking when you send the preliminary budget to the mayor that you could send it to council as well.
are
The
you
mayor
asking about directors' requests? Like the director submitted requests for their next year budget?
Well, you send a preliminary budget to the mayor, do
The
you know?
mayor develops.
Ah,
And then that budget is then put into a book, and so all the narrative that you see, that's done from at the beginning of September to the time you get it. We're putting that all together after the mayor has released the budget. A lot of work goes into that to get that final document that you see that gets posted on the website. There is no downtime between those two days. So we'd love to get it to you sooner. It's just the timeline to put it all together. It takes an enormous amount of work.
May I make a comment on that?
Sure.
That one way to circumvent waiting is to create our own budget. Just saying. I mean, and then take their budget into account. Just
Never
saying.
mind, we have, so I've got a preliminary agenda for the 5th Wednesday meeting of this month where we'll talk about budget, so And then that will include kind of reviewing what are current goals and priorities and some of the budget related asks we've already put in there, and then opening the floor to council members to discuss other specific budget asks or general desires to hopefully see if we can get a consensus out there what we'd like to see.
There's no public input at the fifth Wednesday, right?
Not currently planned.
Okay,
Well,
because
it'll be a
Facebook
study
believes
session,
that
yeah.
there is. So just checking. Okay, all
So
done
we
with them.
can, I mean, we can just, I would encourage people to probably write in comments, if they can at any time, write into City.Council, yeah, ahead of time, if there's specific asks. And then as far as, I think then, well, we can talk about the full timeline there, but did work with Mike in amending the schedule from last year so that, as we discussed this year, the budget will go, I can look at the exact date, but correct me if I get it wrong, but roughly budget will go public on like Wednesday night after council meeting, similar to last year. We'll have our first meeting on Monday. We'll have we'll have a regular council meeting for study session that Wednesday. We'll have another budget meeting Thursday. And then it'll be a full week to the next Thursday that we come back for the final discussion. So as council wanted, instead of having Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're done. It'll now be Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then a full week for us to go back to the public, discuss, and have our final meeting where we're adjusting.
That's virtually exactly the same as last year. The budget was released after council on Wednesday, the 19th.
Mhm.
We had a budget workshop on October 24th. On October 19th, we had a budget on October 24th, 25th. Council meeting was devoted to budget, and then we had one on the 24, 25, on the 27th. And then not until the following Wednesday did we do the final Q&A. So that's
No, we had briefings Monday, Tuesday, and then on Thursday we were doing our final adjustments, create the final budget before going to a study session and then a general passage. So the difference this year is that we'll get the second briefing on a Thursday, and then it'll be a full week until we have to come back to discuss our tweets for the third meeting.
okay. I can't see the difference, but I will go and eat food and look at it again. But every time I've looked at it, it looks basically exactly the same, except that it's one workshop less.
Maybe we can
So I'll go look.
let's start a calendar together and
Yeah.
meeting, maybe that'll help.
Okay.
But anyway, long story short, we'll have more time to say, all right, the budget has been public, council has gotten the brain download on the budget, the explanations from departments. We'll then have a full week to go back out to the community if we want to host any district meetings, take comments, and then be able to take that public comment and say, okay, based on what we've heard from the public, council, let's do some tweaks and take into account the public comment. And then of course there's another basically 2 weeks of where it's open, if we wanted a study session or at the general meeting, make a final tweak. Go, Denise, yeah.
Just about budget. I think what we're hearing is we want the public to be able to have more participation in the process. Or in some way. I would be very reticent to take a budget on because I've created budgets that are smaller, much smaller than this one. I do like very much that the mayor works closely with department heads on creating that budget. I suppose I'm wondering where the work is, just like there's work between the departments, Mr. Riley and the mayor to do all that. How does council work in that same way? How can we, because this is one area that we kind of cross over with responsibility. And so we're saying we want more public participation in certainly a managed way that can have impact. I know that there's very little play in all this. So I don't want the public thinking that they're gonna be able to, have a laundry list of things that are just not possible. That's why the last meeting, I asked for what I always called assumptions, Mike. It's like, what are the budget assumptions for this year? And if you shared that with us, I know my brain would wrap around it a lot faster, because that's the context for me. Your budget assumptions for the next year are the context for the whole process. So there
If I
are
can jump in there and
ways.
talk with Mike, so that for the fifth Wednesday May meeting, one of the things, Director Riley will do, is kind of give an update on how are we looking at our budget outlook this year, since we're now, past the first quarter, so we know what the reality is compared to our approved budget, and then also talk a little bit about, much as we know about 2024 now, and economic outlook a little, it's a crystal ball, it's a ways off, so we'll talk about that as well. And then going back to your comment on the public, I think that's why we scheduled this meeting, because hearing loudly from council, they wanted input early in the process. If you know any specific, let me take a step back and say, obviously, we're all elected or appointed because we are members of the community that knows input. So I think we know a fair amount about what people in the community want budget-wise, but there's an opportunity, I'd say now in the next couple of weeks, to reach out to specific people of those kind of projects, budget asks, for consideration now, so we can get it to the administration early, so they can see what's feasible, what's not, what they can work in. And then we'll have, they'll be able to take that into account in the rest of the year. We can keep reaching out. That's it, yeah.
If I can weigh in a little bit, so the council has committees, we have finance committee. So we brief finance committee where we're at, what the current conditions are, where the fund balance is, and then the finance chair delivers out the council. So we haven't had a mechanism to come to council and say, here's where we're at, we have a committee. Haven't been there yet.
We haven't been there yet, yeah.
We just had a meeting with that council. Part of that discussion, we're gonna talk about some economic indicators and talk about what the banking, what's happening with the banking industry. And so that's where that mechanism has been. If you want something different, open to it. I think there's some good things in the audit report. What I'm hearing from council is you want to talk to the folks in the city. We talk about workshops. Those are council workshops. There's plenty of cities that do that. We talked about videos there. I talked to President Coughlin regarding a budget video or a council that support, at least with the assumptions and model it and getting on in front of camera, putting it on the website. There's a lot of options to do it. But it's council driven. If you want to have a workshop, happy to attend. If we want to do a fifth Wednesday internally, sounds like we're recapping the retreat, talking to Councilor Coughlin, this, we're recapping the retreat that talk about goals and priorities that are very established. It's going to fall into our budget plan. And we're just going to kind of true that up and then see if there's any specific things you'd like to see in the budget. If the council wants to build a budget, it takes months and months of the public works director and his staff that spend hours and hours putting this together and trying to balance a very complex budget. This isn't a simple house budget. This is difficult. And so to do that, to work with the mayor's budget, the proposed budget, which is required by RCW, have a proposed budget from the administration that is adopted by the council, not developed by the council. But you can definitely put something together with priorities. And that's what we asked for in the retreat. What is your goals? What's your priorities? And let's build something around that we can present to you. Happy to work along the way, saying, yeah, how is the economics looking? I'll tell you right now, we have a lot of cost overruns. We're talking a lot about REIT. We just got that TIB award that offset REIT for Clinton Square. We know there's cost overruns. We need to have those funds to apply to those projects. That's what I talked to Coughlin about, because that's our message. As we're heading into still unknown territory, we're looking at inflation with the Fed just raised. They're looking for a 2% inflation target. They're not there. We're just about 4.5%, depends on which indicator you're looking at. If you remove restaurants and service industry type stuff, it's about 5%. So we're looking at all those things. Happy to hear you guys on the contract.
Any other items on that topic, or wait till the Wednesday?
Real small thing.
Sure.
So our rules and procedures say that, like, if you don't show up for a meeting, if you're a counselor and you don't show up for a meeting, you got to say why.
So
hang on, almost done.
Well, I'm going to correct. If you're remote, yes. If you're absent, no.
Okay. It's been the custom, but okay. And then I guess moving on from that, I think we've had 2 and possibly even 3 committees that were canceled for lack of quorum. So maybe
Frustrating.
So maybe we could come up with some system where it's like, we could go, hey, I'm not going to be able to make this, and see if another counselor could jump in for that. So that, the finance can be presented and the court can make its pitch and all of that, and the business could continue.
And I would like to say, it just feels like this is what I was gonna chat about, and this can be talked, and I was gonna just maybe chat about it with you, but maybe since we're just already talking about it,
Sure.
it's just, I try to let people know way ahead of time when I can't make it to something, and when our directors put together these great meetings and bring guests and so on, it's just, and there's emergencies happen, but sometimes there are things happen that aren't emergencies. And I just would like to just extend just a public request for folks to just be courteous with each other about notification, because this is 2 of my committees that I'm leadership in have been canceled due to lack of communication from other people, not emergencies.
Yeah, and this is why I mentioned that 2 weeks ago to council if you're going to be absent, as soon as possible, notify not only council staff, but the committee chairs of any committees you might be on, or myself, and I'll distribute. But yeah, agreed. I really like that suggestion about pinch hitting on committees, but I don't know, I have to go off and look at the legal, if they're
Shouldn't be
appointed or
a
not
problem
appointed.
if
Okay.
there's,
What a great phrase.
I like it, I'm very.
Yeah.
I mean, whether, the only thing I would want, you wouldn't want a set necessarily alternate, like that shows up at every meeting, but, oh, I'm not participating or something like, but someone just completely, and maybe we could just make it a rule that and then the rule that council president can appoint an alternate, if there's a lack of forum or something like that.
Can it be easier it seems like then we're putting a lot of, what you call Jeff, and he's gonna call somebody else. I mean, we can't, is this like a pre-set up kind of a thing that we can do? Say like the alternate is so-and-so?
You gotta find your own sub.
I'm a substitute, but that's one of my many jobs, so.
What I would want is oh, they're gonna be gone, I'll get someone, I don't know,
Like, oh, I can be gone because there's an alternate?
I kinda
Yeah.
I like to contact the council president, or the council president
Okay.
could either fill in themselves or find someone to fill in.
Yeah.
I do my best too.
Yeah, is this come up in the past?
I'm listening. No, this is kind of a free thing, in my opinion. It's kind of a free thing. Our current makeup of the council is interesting as well, as far as, I don't want to get into it. I think we all understand that some people can't talk about re-election and stuff, but some people are more into it than others. Let's just put it that way. So I think it's going to change next year. I think it's going to change. We just got to get through this year. That's fine.
I'm really not updating, working with you on updating up to the suggestions from earlier in the year. It's been operating under new custom, so we'll try and work that into any proposed rules and procedures change for.
Sure, I know that my son's little league.
So I like that a lot.
System where you can put yourself available.
Literally pitch hitting?
No, so if a team doesn't have enough players and they need players to field the team to make it go forward that night, you can be on that roster and be called to play for that team. So you'll see kids out there with an off-color uniform, things like that. So
Okay.
all the games get to happen.
Needed, so. Cool.
So I wanted to talk, if we're done with that,
Yeah.
we didn't
Excellent
finish the budget talk. So I'm just sitting here listening to
Oh,
this.
apologies.
No worries. So I had 2 thoughts on that. So I did read the auditor's report, and let's do something with the auditor's report. And that's, quite frankly, Lori Smith and Christine don't have the capacity to run these items that were mentioned in the audit report, as far as they don't.
No, which items?
All the different community outreach that these other cities do. So instead of telling the administration to do this and that, I suggest they pick one for this year, one of those best practices, and implement it whatever, you guys, the mayor and Mike wants to do, pick one to show that you're actually interested in engaging the public. Pick one. And then the other thing is, I've been through this enough times, and I hear the same echoing of frustration from the public. And basically, this is a done deal when it comes to the public hearing, and everything's set in stone. And then historically, the council argues over 50 or 100,000 or less. And this is whatever, 100, whatever that is, 130, 170 million, whatever the number is, budget. It's just kind of like they're frustrated. So it would behoove us, if we're interested, instead of this being, the administration's budget and then the council picks at the edges. If you really want to know what the taxpayers want or expect of their city, doing these community meetings isn't going to do it. Getting 10 people, whatever, you're getting a slant anyways of people that want to go to these community meetings. You're not hearing from our other 39,000 plus taxpayers who are too busy in their lives to give their input, but they have expectations of the city. You don't hear about it except from complaints when something's not right. So the proper procedure would be to send out a survey. And I don't want to hear in this day and age about, oh, the survey. So for years, Microsoft has a survey product. I have employees and I delegate it to one person. It's absolutely free. It's part of the Office suite. And my employees that filled out the survey did it over the internet. So, and then some magic happens and I get the results.
Algorithm.
On the internet.
Well, whatever, it's not that complicated. So we could come up with a survey that doesn't require a lot of narrative, but maybe priorities. We hear a lot about homelessness issues, and rightly so. Is that the number one priority of the citizens? Are they more concerned about streets and sidewalks or public safety? We have priorities from our citizens and we see where we rank. So when we're thinking about a decision, we could say, well, you know what? Here's the top 3 priorities of our citizens. We've never had that. We have the anecdotal, I talk to these people or whatever. You don't talk to how many thousands of people are in your district. You may try, but you don't. Let's send out some surveys. Goodness gracious. Let's get off our lazy bones and do something.
On the presentation end, I've got one other part of the agenda for the 5th Wednesday. We'll be discussing that. And I know Mike's already taken a look and is seeing what they can do with their limited staff and incorporate those recommendations. But yeah, any thoughts on the survey? Or I do my own?
Once we get a public relations person, easy.
I mean, are you talking? I love it.
So let's go get Jennifer the non.
Oh, I did that to you again.
No, I'm playing
Really
loosey
okay?
goosey, so
Okay.
okay, not on me.
So I love the idea of a survey and I don't know that it would take a lot of staff time. I mean, like, it would take a lot of staff time to do all the auditors report, but we could actually. Oh, yeah.
So surveys are easy, getting the right questions that you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just get 7 bodies. We've tried this before. Happy to do it. We got to find the right questions that comes out of the council, what you want to ask. And then we're happy to put it out. We've done it before. We put it in.
You
I
rank.
should do a electronic survey. We put it in utility bills before for survey questions.
Yeah.
Happy to do it. It's not a lot of work. What's been difficult is getting
That's fair.
consensus of this body to put questions together.
That's fair.
So
It needs-
and it takes somebody to work with that and liaison. I'd ask this body to work with your staff and let me know what that looks like, and we're happy to put it out and manage it and then bring the data back.
I don't recall ever being asked about what kind of survey question I want to ask. I don't recall that, Mike.
2015. 2015. And we had a lot of it on a big survey. That was too much.
So here's one possibility is that we could, like, I have the top 5 things from my neighborhood, from my district, and I think all of us do. So if we could get a small number of things that we think is true and send out a survey that say, what are your top 3? Because I really like this idea of, what are your top 3 priorities?
And it's not.
Yeah, I'm almost done. In my culture, interrupting shows that we're interested in what you're saying. So
And if I remember right, that Roseville, Minnesota had that response questionnaire, had what are your priorities?
Well, and I think if we keep it general enough, what I want to avoid is specific projects or something like that. But if we send a survey out that, is traffic, important, is, housing, is the homelessness crisis, is the drug crisis,
Yeah, so I'm just going to respond to that. One of the things that just kept knocking me out when I was campaigning the first 2 or 3 times was that people would say, my biggest concern is homelessness. And I would think, that they were talking about how unpleasant it was to have to come in contact, because that's something that we hear very often. And in fact, what their concern about homelessness was that the city wasn't doing enough and that the city should be doing more. So like a little more specific than just homelessness. But I think that the cleanliness is wrong, but this like picking top 3 things, I think that that's something that would actually give us information and would, I don't know how to get there right now because I'm starving to death, but I thought that was a really good suggestion.
For about 5 more minutes and then.
Okay.
You
Mike
have a lot
did
of comments
it,
coming in to the.
Andre has a couple things to say.
Surveys and new comp plans, there's a lot of questions, just got a comment.
Let's see, we got, so Andrea said we did surveys for the comp plan and she has a link to PDF results,
75.
which Zoom is not letting me
75
open, but I'm sure
So
I'll work on sending that out after the meeting.
you got 75
Yeah.
respondents for citywide comp plan.
I didn't see anything about that. Andrea said just send an email. Cool, thank you, Andrea. Appreciate it.
So when I started, before I started campaigning, I started sending out a survey and it was months. It was it. And then when I started campaigning, I integrated it in part of what I was doing when I walked around. And I got about 160 results. And that was because I was walking around and talking to people. It wasn't, and I would mail them to them with a self-addressed, with a stamped envelope, return postage. If you want to get good feedback, you got to go door to door too. I'm just saying. So here's my suggestion. I think I really like the idea of a survey because I think there's value in that, as long as we also bear in mind that to get unskewed, better data, that it's going to take multiple forms of outreach, which is doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is going out door to door, talking to people. Like some of us have contact lists, but you know what? Like my most valuable conversations were standing on porches of people that did not vote for the same president as me, that I might not attract to my community meetings, but we had great, fulfilling, valuable conversations and they had better feedback. So, that's something, that's going to be, something to keep in mind. So.
Yeah, Eric, and then y'all.
No need to reinvent the wheel. See what other cities done in surveys.
Yeah.
This year is a giant baby step towards public outreach versus the last 12 years. So let's just do something. It's not going to be perfect, but make the effort. And again, we don't need to be racking our brains. Look at what other communities that did for their surveys and send it out and then read the results. And it's much better than nothing. At least it's a start and we can build up.
I'd support that. I want to, definitely be not asking staff to do any comprehensive data analysis on it or anything, but so maybe Mike, you and I can talk one-on-one, brainstorm, see what comes up, or
Sounds pretty easy.
Yeah, okay.
Wednesday, sooner the better. Obviously, as we're building,
Yeah.
you're here and we want here. So again, happy to assist and give you some background for you, what we're thinking for.
Sounds good. And I think in general, all we can do to encourage people to write into City Council and contact us with their requests is good. But yeah, to your point, I go back to, I don't know if you heard me ramble and nerd out in the first council report of last year. But same, I did my
I do remember that.
800 responses I got from people talking to people and all the
You took
breakdown.
notes
And
at every
so
interaction of all
I
the different
always,
things.
I did, and I wrote down and I went and categorized each comment and, you know.
Is it a Power BI file?
No,
I think-
I can't remember how I made this anymore. Something anyway, but I went down to the nitty gritty detail of the different categories and different requests. And it's been helpful for me to go back and calibrate and go, what were people's, you know, top things? And, you know, Director Nucky infrastructure up there and development and growth and, you know, public safety and I don't know. But it's tough. It's tough all around. It's tough to get, you know, the exact will of 45,000 people.
That was a great
That's a good
presentation.
discussion of
Yeah.
PhD and,
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Excellent discussion. So I think I'll save the rest for the 5th Wednesday meeting. But budget is huge, so I appreciate you bringing it up. It's one of the core things we do. All right. Any other general business before adjourning? Excellent. Let me pull up my script so I can read the magic legal words to end us. All right. Oh, that's right. Farmers Market opens tomorrow.
And green drinks is tomorrow at
Green
Gold
drinks at
Mountain.
At Gold Mountain Golf Course, green
Yeah.
drinks. So I'll be there after playing
After-
around. I'm taking the day off to play around and be there.
Well, I almost certainly be at the farmer's market, which is where the real
Yeah,
party
That's
is.
right.
I'll be stopping there on my way to the
All right,
other
we are ready to
party.
go.
And a happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there early for Sunday. And also we'll announce the next city council meeting will be held next week on Wednesday, May 17th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. in the first floor meeting chambers with our usual remote options. And with that, meeting is adjourned.